The crystal chandelier in the center of my parents' dining room cost $14,000. I know this because I paid the invoice for it 6 months ago, anonymously, through a holding company. My father thinks he bought it with his hard-earned bonus. Right now, he's looking at that chandelier, then looking at me, and telling the entire family that I'm the biggest mistake he ever made. It was my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The who's who of the local real estate scene was there. My older brother Julian was holding court. Julian is the golden boy, 34, a senior partner at Dad's firm, drives a Porsche he can't actually afford, and has the personality of a shark in a silk suit. To 30 years of success, Julian toasted, raising his glass, and to the legacy Dad built. A legacy I'm proud to carry on, unlike some people who prefer to hide in basements playing with digital pretend money. The table erupted in chuckles. My father, Arthur, didn't stop them. He leaned forward, his face flushed from expensive wine. "You know, Leo," he said, staring me down. "I look at Julian and I see a man. I look at you and I see a ghost. You're 29. You don't own a house. You drive a beat-up truck. You have no real clients. When are you going to stop embarrassing this family name and ask Julian for a junior scouting job? At least then you'd be doing honest work." I took a bite of my steak. It was overcooked. "I'm doing okay, Dad," I said quietly. "Okay?" Arthur slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "You're a failure. You've spent 5 years on a tech project that hasn't made a dime of visible profit. You're a parasite, Leo. You're only at this table because your mother has a soft heart." I checked my watch. 8:12 p.m. "In 18 minutes, Dad," I said. "You might want to rethink that parasite comment. To understand why they hated me, you have to understand the family business. Vanguard Realty. They build malls. They build luxury condos. They believe if you can't touch it, it's not real. When I was 22, I showed my father a line of code. I told him, 'Dad, the way you manage property is ancient. You're losing 20% of your margin to inefficient vendors and bad logistics. I can build an automated system that handles it all.' He laughed in my face. Julian told me to go play with my Legos, so I left. I moved into a studio apartment that smelled like damp carpet and old coffee. For 5 years, I lived on a budget of $10 a day. I didn't buy new clothes, I didn't go on dates, I didn't attend family birthdays because I couldn't afford the gifts and I couldn't stand the lectures. But while Julian was busy taking client lunches that were mostly just 3 martini parties, I was building Apex systems. The secret growth. I didn't start with real estate. I started with shipping, then manufacturing. I built an AI-driven logistics engine that was so efficient, it started saving my clients millions. By year 3, I wasn't in a studio anymore. I was in a high-rise. But I kept the ghost persona. I kept the old truck. I kept the cheap apartment lease. Why? Because I knew my father's business. I knew he was over-leveraged. I knew Julian was cooking the books to make their quarterly reports look better than they were. I was waiting for them to hit a wall. 3 months ago, Vanguard Realty hit that wall. They needed a massive cash infusion to finish their Legacy Heights project. They went to the banks. The bank said no. They went to private equity, and that's where they met the Obsidian Group. Back at the anniversary dinner, Julian was getting bolder. He started telling a story about how I'd asked him for a loan 3 years ago. I hadn't. I'd asked him to return the $5,000 he stole from my college fund. "He's a dreamer," Julian mocked. "A pathetic little dreamer. Dad, did you know he's still using that same laptop from college? I saw it in his bag. It's held together by tape." My cousins were laughing. My Aunt Sarah looked at me with genuine disgust. "Leo, honey," she said, "just apologize to your father. Admit you've wasted your life and let him help you." "I don't need help," I said. "Enough!" Arthur roared. "You're a disgrace. I want you out of this house. Now, don't come to Christmas. Don't call your mother. You're cut off." "Not that there's anything left to cut off, you penniless loser." I stood up. I didn't look angry. I looked bored. "Funny you should mention being cut off, Dad. Julian, how is the Legacy Heights project coming along? I heard the mezzanine financing fell through this morning." Julian's face went pale. "How do you know about that? That's internal business." "I know everything about Vanguard," I said. "I know you're $40 million in the hole. I know you've been using the maintenance funds from the Eastside malls to cover the interest. And I know that at 8:30 p.m. tonight, the grace period for your bridge loan expires." Arthur stood up, his eyes bulging. "Who told you this? Who have you been talking to?" The doorbell rang. My mother went to the door. She returned a moment later, followed by 4 men in dark suits. At the front was Marcus Thorne, the most feared corporate liquidator in the city. He was the face of the Obsidian Group. Arthur's face went from red to ghostly white. "Marcus? What are you doing here? Our meeting isn't until Monday." Thorn didn't even look at Arthur. He walked straight to the head of the table, looked at me, and snapped his fingers. One of his assistants stepped forward and opened a leather briefcase. "The signatures are verified, sir," Thorn said, bowing his head slightly toward me. "The foreclosure on Vanguard Realty's primary assets is complete. You now hold 51% of the voting shares in all subsidiary companies, including this house." The silence wasn't just quiet, it was vacuum-sealed. Julian's wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Sir?" he whispered. "Thorn, you work for Obsidian. Why are you talking to Leo?" "Obsidian Group is a shell," Thorn said with a cold smile. "It is a 100% owned subsidiary of Apex Systems, and Apex Systems is owned by your brother." I sat back down in my chair. I picked up a piece of bread. "I'm the parasite, remember, Dad?" I said. "The ghost with the tape-covered laptop." Arthur was shaking. He had to grab the back of his chair to stay upright. "Leo, you bought us? You're bankrupting your own father?" "No," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I'm saving the company. If I hadn't bought your debt, the banks would have liquidated you by Monday morning. You'd be on the street. Julian would be in jail for the embezzlement I found in the Q2 audits." Julian looked like he was going to vomit. "But," I continued, "things are going to change. Julian, you're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your Porsche, which, by the way, is a company lease that I just canceled." "Leo, please," Julian stammered. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed. 10 minutes ago, I was a mistake. Now I'm family, because I have the checkbook. Get out." I looked at my father. He looked old. For the first time in my life, the lion looked like a house cat. "You can stay in the house, Dad. Mom deserves that. But you're retired. I'm the chairman now. Vanguard is being folded into Apex. We're going to do things my way. No more handshakes and gut feelings. We're using the code." I stood up to leave. "Leo," my father called out, his voice cracking. "Wait." I stopped at the door. I didn't know." "That's the problem, Dad," I said. "You never bothered to look." I walked out to my beat-up truck. I could afford a fleet of Ferraris, but I liked the truck. It reminded me of the 5 years I spent building an empire, while the people who were supposed to love me were busy laughing at me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Please, I have a mortgage." I deleted it. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes revenge, hit the like button. Success is the only revenge that matters. Subscribe for more stories like this every week, and tell me in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Leo's shoes? Would you have saved your family or let them burn?